Okay, we're live. Welcome to Dive into World Building, and it's a new year, and I'm running a little late, and that's okay. But today we're going to talk about physical exercise. You know, it's funny because I chose the topic because I have physical exercise goals. I think that the last time we spoke about this topic, it was also sort of the new year, and I had physical exercise goals. So I thought that might be sort of a fun place to start. You know, New Year's resolutions are a thing. Are they a thing? Are they internationally a thing, though? That's an interesting question.
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Like, at least in my circles, there's this whole push toward not making resolutions in the new year, but rather just starting when you think of, for example, physical exercise.
Mm-hmm. So not tying it to the new year is sort of a trend. That makes sense. I think people are trying to get away from New Year's resolutions a bit. But in a way, I mean, there's a way in which taking a break gives you a chance to contemplate your existence and see whether there might be ways that you could better yourself for that kind of thing. But I think it's very interesting that that physical exercise is considered a way to better yourself. That's a cultural value, right? And it's also, you know, I mean, it has to do with your overall health, but there's this sort of moral aspect to it that I think is really culturally interesting.
I think at least a part of it is the whole strength aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's not just, you know, necessarily Western culture, but there's this whole standard of what kind of person is worthy and what kind of person is beautiful, and these have both changed, and they're not necessarily tied together.
Right.
And sort of strength and being able to take care of yourself has, for a very, very long time, has meant worth.
Yeah. There's a sort of a self-reliance aspect to it.
Yeah.
I think there's also almost a little bit of an ascetic quality to it. Like, you know, the sort of the physical punishment of that monks endure. This is the vibe that I get from it. You know, like, I went to the gym and I worked out so hard and I was sore and there was no pain, no gain, and that aspect of it, I think, is kind of fascinating because I think it's in some social circles probably replaced flagellation.
But there's also a sort of a class aspect in some cultures as to how you get the exercise.
Yeah.
You know, are you,
definitely.
You know, are you strong because you make a living shifting boxes, or are you strong because you make a living pushing numbers and you go to the gym?
Yeah. Yep. And I think, yes, definitely, like if you're doing manual labor or you know, things that will make you strong just naturally, it's not yeah, you know, I mean, there's that class consciousness of what you do with your leisure time, and you know, you know, in my leisure time I strive to better myself by going to the gym, blah blah blah. You know, yeah, I totally get that. There's also there's this sort of cultural complication. I'm thinking specifically of the exercise that I'm hoping to do later today, which is yoga, but also martial arts, which have specific cultural backgrounds to them. And in the martial arts case, the cultural background associated is going to depend on which martial art you're talking about. Taekwondo is Korean, and Aikido is Japanese, and Kung Fu is Chinese, and etc. And so there are some interesting cultural issues surrounding how those exercises are practiced in the West, and how the cultural values surrounding them have changed. I mean, I think that's like the core premise of the Karate Kid, really, is cultural appropriation, and what the Westerners did to, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
So like there's the real karate that Mr. Miyagi teaches, and
Right.
then there's the Cobra Kai dojo that is
Evil.
yes.
It's evil because it's become this, it's an exercise and just a way to keep people down, and I mean, like, so
It's a win. It's like, you crank out the people who can win you the trophy.
right, and there is
that
that
was-
aspect to it.
Yeah.
Right, is it as whether it's just a purely competition based thing, but I also think I don't think they had cultural appropriation in mind. Honestly,
No,
I think that they
No.
had.
No.
I think that they had more of what Jay's talking about in mind, with the whole thing about, well, whether it's just for the trophy, whether you will cheat to win, and all those things.
Yeah.
But I think hiding underneath there is a really interesting thread about authenticity and the cultural significance of the practice.
Yeah.
There
So
also-
yeah, and with yoga too. I mean, yoga has when you're not connected to it, is a room full of white girls who've paid lots of money,
Often
striking
very, very white girls.
right, who pay $100 plus for a pair of tight pants, and like some
No,
of the
not just tight pants, very sinful pants.
oh yes, terribly
Pants that will
sinful
send
pants.
you to hell.
Oh my God, yes.
Sorry.
Simple pants. Yes. And of course, you have to have exactly the right outfit and whatever, and you're thinking about, like, where these practices originated, and you're like, really? The outfit, I don't think, was part of it.
No? Really?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
So yeah, and so that's interesting, and it's a question in terms of, like, my own connection with yoga. I walked into a class where yoga was just treated like exercise, and I couldn't connect to it. And then I walked into a different class, and it was treated like a life practice, and it had cultural aspects that I was like, okay, I get it now. and I love that aspect of it, right? And it was, it was life-changing for me, which is why I need to get back to it. So yeah, I guess they're cultural practices of different varieties, right? And okay, so I'm seeing something really interesting about fiction in the chat bar. So let's talk about characters in the story, right? Che was asking, are your characters physically fit? Why? What did they do to get there? What are they doing it for?
Yeah, I think I was just thinking, like, so many books you read, and I realize, like, it's like there's things you can do in movies or in other media, the training montage that is not going to read well if you're devoting an entire chapter to just the character exercise, and that's going to be so boring. But
yeah.
so, like, you sort of default to your character is a knight or a swordsman or some urban fantasy lady with guns, and they're automatically I don't know, doing all kinds of crazy stunts, and they're super strong and they never get tired.
Well, they
So-
often end up being given just sort of superpowers, right?
Just
Yeah.
about, yeah. So it's like, so sometimes it's like you see that a lot. You see a lot of characters who are already fit at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
and don't necessarily have to work hard
Right.
to perform the physical demands of whatever it is they're doing. And
So-
once in a while, maybe they go jogging or something for like some kind of plot point.
I think that Sean and McGuire did something really interesting with October Day. She's so spoiler warning for the entire October Day
Yeah, we do
series.
spoilers here.
But in the very beginning, she's a very weak changeling, which is a child of a human and a fairy. And she's basically a store clerk, and she winds up losing a lot of her humanity during the series, and that turns into her starting to heal super fast, like even for a fae. Which means that she doesn't run. She never runs from anything because A, it's not in her nature, and B, she heals super fast. Like she gets literally gutted in one of the books. And she heals from that because, magic. But anyway, then in one book, because of an evil pie, she turns most of the way back to human, and then she has to run. And that becomes a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was really interesting because she has to run because she can't heal as fast as she used to.
That's interesting. I had a comment when I announced the hangout today on Facebook. And I'm gonna have to keep Brian because you're making it echo. Sorry. Maybe we'll have better luck when he comes in a second time. Cliff Winnig, who is not able to make it today, was like, "Oh, you should mention there's this series by Michael Moorcock, and in the beginning of in the end of the first book, the protagonist loses all these people who were close to him, and then at the beginning of the second book, he's super depressed and hasn't been exercising. So when he's called upon to do his next thing, he has to like go and work out and regain his strength, right?" Yeah. So
You didn't happen to say which series? Just Moorcock.
yeah.
I think he did.
I saw that. I think it was. I want to say Hawkmoon something or other, but I haven't really read much Moorcock.
Hawkmoon, yeah.
So don't quote me on that.
Yeah, it's Hawkmoon. I just checked.
Well, in my novella, in my forthcoming novella, which I get to say now, there are questions of whether the protagonist is in good physical shape, and it's actually I actually found it kind of interesting to work with because he's an alien who is semi-bipedal. and so I have to be very careful about his physicality, right? And so, he can run 60 miles in a day, but he can't walk on 2 feet for more than about an hour before his hips start to get sore, right? And people walk around all the time in town on their 2 feet, right? Because that's polite. You interact with people and you use your hands. So you don't just walk around on fours all the time. But if you want to get anywhere, right, you go on fours. Also, if you're feeling like you're not very trusting, you go on fours. And the other thing that he has is that he has a history of drug addiction that he's recovering from. And so basically, I don't even know how old he would be, but I'm guessing he'd be in his 40s if he were a human being. Crossing fingers for Brian here. But he has a past in which he was a fighter in the army and he was a general. And so he actually was extremely fit. And then, of course, left the army, got addicted to drugs, was in terrible shape for at least a few years, right? And then managed to get off the drugs by getting put onto something else that was not quite as bad for him. And so he's recovered a lot in the last year, but he's always talking about, like, my strength is gone. I can't run 60 miles in 6 hours anymore. I'll have, it's going to take me 8 hours. Darn. But those
I have no reference for that.
Important to the plot, so. Here, I'm writing notes over here.
Now, I will say, I put this in the chat bar, but like the exception to the character actually going through training that I've read usually shows up in young adult novels, where the girl character goes through training with a cute guy who trains.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It is such a thing.
Yep.
And then inevitably it's the boy she has a crush on. So
okay, yeah, absolutely.
Take that for what you will.
Well, I mean, the first place I think I ever saw that specifically. Actually, no, it wasn't quite that, because do you guys remember The Blue Sword?
I have not read that.
The Blue Sword. I think it's Robin McKinley, but I love that book. And she goes through training and ends up, but she doesn't actually get trained by the cute guy. She actually goes through a bunch of training and then ends up fighting the cute guy.
Oh, sure. Why wouldn't you?
Either or.
But I mean, I actually highly recommend that book. It's a very cool book. It's one of the ones that I thought was really neat in terms of just having a cool female protagonist who could do a lot of cool stuff. And then there somehow always has to be somewhere in the exercise related sequence this statement that the only way to get over being sore is to do more of the stuff that made you sore. You guys are in that. I swear, it's almost like we've got company on the list of things that I don't ever really need to hear again ever in any work of fiction.
I've tried that, and I keep trying to get into shape by starting a couch to 10K type of program.
Oh, dear.
I have to say, their definition of couch is not my definition of couch. Because it progresses fast enough that if you just ignore the pain and do more of it, you end up not being able to walk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Books do tend to ignore like recovery time.
Yeah.
Where like, you do need, like, if you've gone at it really hard, you need 3 days off.
Yeah.
And then go work another area, and then go back.
Yeah.
So it's like you got to kind of trade off. You don't just.
You do, and for example, I mean, so for example, me at my age, I love rock climbing, but I can't go 2 days in a row. I just can't. Like, I would injure myself. So like and in fact, I have injured myself doing it with 1 day of rest, right? So I'm
Right.
like, I have to be really careful not to do too much exercise of a particular type in a week. And yeah, fiction tends to kind of just say, well, it doesn't matter because this is fiction and we need her to get in shape really fast.
On the other hand,
Yeah.
a lot of the fiction focuses on really, really young people, like 20s and younger.
Yes.
And at that age, you can bounce back really quickly.
Yes.
There's also the assumption, I think, that most people are able-bodied, and if they're not able-bodied, they are visibly not.
Yeah.
And you can see that they are. There's a vast difference between.
Yeah, they'll be like the kid with the
able-bodied.
limp, or
Yeah.
somebody who lost a hand in battle or something.
Yeah.
But
although
but
there's
it's not.
Sorry.
But that's not all there is. It's not one end or the other. There's in between that you feel like you're able-bodied because you can walk places, but you're not fit because you can't run places. But if you look at it, where other people walk and how far they can walk without getting tired, they're able-bodied, but you suddenly realize that actually, in terms of statistics and how common it is, you're not. Specifically, I'm not. So. But I think that's an assumption that is made in fiction and in the exercise couch to.
Yeah, people tend
whatever
to
it is.
ignore the fact that there are invisible ways to be restrained.
Yeah.
In one's physical activity. Yeah. I'm also working with a character right now, and I am not sure whether to have her be visibly disabled or not. And this is a character who had trauma in childbirth due to complications and anesthesia and various things, and basically had a nerve pinch that didn't allow her to use one of her legs for months after her child was born. And she's now 2 years later able to walk again, but she's been relying on other people to help her a bit. And I'm not sure whether to have it be completely invisible or whether to have it be something that's, where she would need a cane, for example.
Yeah.
Because if it's completely invisible, then you're like, well, how do people know she's got this issue? Unless they're in her head.
Or she tells them, or something happens, like if her leg gives out periodically,
right,
sometimes, and she just falls down, and she's like, no, I'm fine. This happens, or something.
Yeah.
Or I'm not fine. Help me up. As the case may be.
Yeah, and research for this was very interesting, as you can imagine. But but it's tricky, and in some ways I think it would be cool for her to use a cane, but in some ways I'm like,
Or it could also be a factor of depending on the day.
Yeah.
Because like invisible disability, I'm not an expert. I'm pretty much able-bodied, but my understanding is that it varies from day to day and month to month.
Yeah.
How much it affects you.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
But some days I walk around with my cane hanging off my arm because I'm using my hands for something else, and some days I really need it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. So, I mean, the idea, because like basically what's happening is I'm writing a story from the perspective of this person, who is a person that appears in my novel as a secondary character with no visible problems. And so, knowing what I know now about her and her history, I don't know whether I need to go back and tweak things in the novel and if that would be valuable or not. So, I mean, because, yeah, depends on how long the injury lasts and, you know.
I think it's like, how much do you want to go back and do rewrites or not? Is the answer.
Well, there is that.
It could
I
also
still have
be
plenty of opportunities for that, so.
But do you
Depending-
want to? I think some of this, I think, like, it's authorial laziness and or not, I think, plays into a lot of this. It's just...
Yeah. Well, I mean, so getting back to a point that we made earlier, I think it's valuable to think about what the physical background of the physical history of a person is, and if they have superpowers, at least make a nod to how they might have developed them. If you don't want them just to be sort of Supergirl or whatever. You were going to say something, Nina?
Yeah, can I add to the previous discussion, kind of tying into this, that you can also mess with, if the culture that your character is in, you can mess with how much they appreciate physical ability.
Mm-hmm.
So that, for example, she can be trying to pass,
Mm-hmm.
even though she's in pain.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is one of the problems that actually she's dealing with, because and I'm on the fence about it. And I'll tell you why in 2 seconds. So she's a member of the global cast in my world of Varan, and the global cast is in decline. So people go to great lengths not to show any physical lack of ability, right? On the other hand, there are quite a number of people who just can't help it, right? And so there's this question of where the line is drawn between people who are fit for society and people who are not, which I deal with in the novel a bit. But then the other thing is that women who have borne a lot of children are very highly regarded. So I am on the fence between having her try to hide it because she wants to appear able-bodied and having her sort of be like a war hero, where I was wounded in the struggle against the decline. I will wear my injury proudly. You know what I'm saying? So I am not sure. I think it's more likely that she'll try to pass, but on the other hand, it's tricky, right?
Yep.
So yeah. It's interesting to work with older characters too. It's something I've been doing more lately, and I mean, I think it's really interesting to work with the specific physicality of a character. And there are many different things that can influence a character's specific physicality, right? There's disability, but there's also, quirks of birth. Like I have one character who has very short legs for just random reasons, and he's incredibly fit. But there are some odd things about his perspective, like he'll feel taller when he's sitting than when he's standing up, so yeah, so that's kind of you have to kind of play around with that, and if you're specifically also if you're dealing with aliens, right, you have to really it's a really good idea to think about the kind of physicality that an alien has. And whether that would be, whether it's an able-bodied alien or not, as in the case of my character Ruli, who is sort of able-bodied, but sort of not. Yeah. So I can see that there is a really interesting conversation going on in the sidebar. So I'm going to try to bring it into the general discussion, and it's about pedestrians. And I'm really glad you brought it up, actually. The U.S. is terrible at making pedestrians feel comfortable and welcome. The distances are too long. The distances are too long. Like the towns are not designed for people to walk them. I used to live in San Jose, and it would take 20 minutes just to leave my apartment complex on foot. There's no way that you can have, you lose enormous quantities of your life to just trying to get somewhere, unless you specifically got these dense mini communities that are designed to be accessible to pedestrians. And like my local mall is like a death trap. I'm like, if you ever, like I told the mayor once, I'm like, you have got to have a plan for the city for pedestrians, because seriously, I feel like I take my life into my own hands every time I try to walk to the mall, which is, a 25-minute walk from me. And that's not bad. Like, when it's Christmas time and everybody's flocking to the mall in their cars, I would much rather be on foot. But at the same time, I gotta have my radar out because I don't want to get hit by a car. So
you don't do personal reflectors in the US unless you're like working at an airport or something.
Yeah, personal. No, if you're cycling, you do. Yeah.
No, but here everyone wears them.
Oh, really?
Like it's not exactly law, but it's close.
And tell me what form they take, Nina.
Things that are this big.
And you put them on your clothes or what?
Yeah. They're like, they hang off your clothes, or you can have an armband, or stuff that you attach to your backpack or whatever.
And you wear those under what circumstances generally? All the time, or?
From pretty much September to May.
Oh.
Everywhere.
Winter.
Winter.
Huh. That's cool.
In the dark.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Which
When it's
is
darker,
what it is.
earlier, foggy, overcast, etc.
Yeah.
Cool. See? Learn something new every day. I love it.
and south of Helsinki in Estonia, it's actually law. You can get fined if you're not wearing a personal reflector during the winter months.
Okay.
Joo, ehkä minä kannattaisi vielä.
Wow, that was cool. Okay. Okay. I'm scanning down the sidebar. Some jobs involve a lot of walking.
Yeah.
And for example, in Australia, my husband's uncle was a postman.
Yeah.
And he had to walk with the mail. Now, in my region, nobody walks to deliver the mail. I mean, they'll drive their car to a spot and do a walk around a neighborhood or something. But maybe not even that, because in my neighborhood, the post person just kind of drives around with the truck and says, "Hey, here's your mail." But I have to say, he was one of the fittest people I have ever seen, because he had spent, and I met him when he was older, so he had spent like 50 years working as a postman. Oh my goodness, Yeah. He had a body that said, "I walked miles every day for my whole life."
Yeah, that's if you
of walking.
So much of your fitness in later life comes from, were you fit throughout your life in your younger years? And because you slide into fragility is this huge downhill slide for the elderly. Like once you go fragile, there's kind of no coming back from that, and you just die. Basically,
I don't think that's entirely true, but I have seen
not entirely, but it's like you break down faster.
I mean, exercise helps to maintain your body, doesn't it?
That you had been fit, yeah.
When you get to a certain age, exercise is only about trying to stave off the decay of fitness rather to improve it.
Yeah.
Believe me, I'm there.
Yeah. But I mean, it helps. It does help. I had sort of a long time ago decided the kind of old person I wanted to be, and I decided this in college. And I went to a community college, and so we had people of all ages, and there was this woman who would come into the painting class to work on large canvases. And the large canvases she was working on, she based on photographs of mountains she had climbed.
Wow.
And I was like, oh man, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be that. I'm going to be that old lady. I like decided that then and there. And I mean, I haven't taken up mountain climbing, but like, I try to exercise a lot and frequently. And, because I've seen, like, you see that. You see the old people who just get weaker and weaker and weaker. And it's like, you've got to sort of like, so I like decided that.
Yeah, and I think and also there are practices like yoga that could go into aging and actually help to keep your fitness and in fact, one of the things that I noticed about yoga, which really blew my mind, was how the way that it strengthens the muscles surrounding your joints gives you such better body control and balance, which is an incredibly valuable thing, because it's like over time, they talk about, old people fall, right? And I'm like, how do you fall, right? It's like when you're young, you have no concept. But like over time, I'm like, wait a second, I really need to keep doing yoga because it's going to keep me from falling later in my life. Because your vestibular system has more trouble as you get older, and mine already is a little bit less than it used to be. But having it's the tiny muscles, right? It's the tiny muscles that you work in some practices like Pilates and yoga that really are the things that help you to sort of stay upright and not lose your balance and stuff, and correct your balance if you're starting to go off a little, which I think is actually kind of interesting because there is a distinct difference between exercise for the major muscles and exercise for the tiny ones. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So, oh my goodness. You guys are so ahead of me here. I think it's valuable to mention how car culture has changed things. Cars just need a lot more space. And in fact, I was just this morning talking about how much space you need when you're in a vehicle to make moves safely, right? With my kids when we were driving to school. And because cars need so much space to be safe, so people are not having to make all kinds of really quick maneuvers and squeeze their large vehicles through tiny spaces, which I have seen them do, in fact, because of living in Tokyo and seeing various places in Europe where the streets are not nearly as wide. there are complications there and it slows you down. But when you have a place like California, which is where I live, where the entire state was basically developed for the most part after, with few exceptions, obviously, developed after the advent of the automobile, then you get these places like my apartment complex in San Jose where you can't get anywhere because it's designed for people who are in cars. And in fact, that skews things again towards people who have money, right?
Point of interest, I don't have a driver's license.
Oh, wow.
Well, public transport is a thing.
Yes, public transport
some places
is a thing.
it is. Some places it is, and some places it isn't.
Yeah, America, because of the car culture, got rid of and stripped down its public transit on the assumption that everyone is going to have a car, and then it also necessitated everyone having to have a car.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the moment I realized that I was in a very, very, very different place was, I think it was my first visit to America. We were going from New York to DC by train, and we passed a drive-by bookshop. And I was like, what? How do you? That is not a thing. But it turns out it is a thing.
Well, there are drive-through everything practically. I mean, there's drive.
Yes, but
Pharmacy.
that is not a thing.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, I don't even know how you'd use that. I guess just for pickup. If you knew what you were buying.
I
You
really
can't browse
don't know.
from your car unless there's like a computer screen. But then who's gonna sit there while somebody spends 40 minutes browsing the computer screen?
Yeah.
I
mean,
really
California
don't
is
know.
now having to sort of backform a lot of public transportation because,
Yeah. Because they didn't, it was inadequately developed and maintained to begin with.
Yeah.
It also
And in
makes-
fact, the ferry system on San Francisco Bay was actually deliberately broken down because they were worried that nobody was going to drive across the bridges and the bridges would never pay themselves back.
Oh my.
Really?
Wow.
What are you thinking? No, lack
Wrong
of
verb.
But yeah,
that's,
so
public transportation systems, mass transit systems tend to make assumptions about who's able-bodied and what they're using the transportation for.
Mhm.
We live, there is a bus that goes through our village that we live 6 miles from, and the route goes through Ithaca, and my husband could take a bus if he drives into the village and parks to work. It would take 2 hours to get to work, which is a 30-minute drive, because it's not designed for that particular commute. It's also not designed to get students to school. From apartments to the community college. So
there are already people in big cities like New York and Philadelphia who don't drive.
Yeah.
I've met them. But there are fewer. It's sort of like a surprising thing when you meet one.
Well, and it is predicated on there being some form of public transportation that is reliable and will get you where you need to go in the times that you need to get there.
Well, in fact, in Tokyo, that's one of the big deals is that you can't open workplaces before a certain hour because people have to be able to get there in public transport.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to remark based on due to Morgan's comment about people being able-bodied is Japan was terrible for that for a very long time. They're getting better. But when we were like, well, we want to take our kids to Japan and show them where we met, we're like, we're going to wait until they can walk really, really well. because they don't even have escalators in some kinds of stations.
Oh, wow.
And you have to be able to walk up 60 stairs
Mm.
if you want to go there. You know, like otherwise you just
Fair.
can't go to that station.
Most New York subway stations don't have escalators, and some don't even have elevators.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, in fact, I think very few of them have elevators in the
Yeah.
in Japan, but maybe more now because they have been working on that. But I have seen some very, very interesting wheelchair lifts attached to walls near the stairwells in Tokyo in recent years, which is like, wow, okay. You know, guess you didn't have an elevator.
Retrofitted.
Yeah.
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 And
long as
there's
it
been a lot of
works.
retrofitting, which is good, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that will get you in shape. It will also exhaust you. When I was living there and I had a cold, I just couldn't go back to my commute until I was really, really well, because it was an hour and a half on the train when I was studying there. And an hour and a half on the train, getting in and out of cold versus hot environments and climbing stairs was just too much for my feeble constitution.
That's not a feeble constitution though, man. When you're sick, that stuff
Yeah.
just knocks you on your ass. I mean, it just does. I know that I've been frustrated in some books where like the character is sick throughout the entire book, but like they keep carrying on, and I'm just like, no, I'm sorry. They should be in bed during this whole book because that's bullshit. Like I call bullshit on that. You know, because it's like you're not that functional when you're that sick, and maybe I'm wrong.
Well, you know, I mean, I think it's different for different people. That's part of it. But I do think, you know, there's clearly some value in a character being able to do the quest.
Yeah.
I did read this one book where the protagonist was constantly being grievously injured.
And then they're still just wandering around, right? They're still just walking around.
You know, like having to, you know, co-opt a thing to split up her wrist because she was mauled by a wolf. I just like, yes, to some degree the realism is valuable, but then it went far over into the other side of it, where it's like, if you were that injured,
yeah,
you would
like
not be going anywhere because you'd be hit a little ball on the floor going, ow.
There's also a point to be said for pain actually being very exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, beyond the immediacy of the adrenaline rush and so on, if you keep having pain from injuries or disability or whatever, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It is. If you don't, if you are in chronic pain, it at some point it stops registering as pain, and just it's constant exhaustion. And I know this because of my kid.
Yeah.
So people will say, you know, what's your pain level? I don't know. It's exhaustion. It doesn't register anymore. So yes, Nina, that is absolutely true.
Well, we are a little past 11, and I know we got a late start, so I didn't want to make anybody be quiet. I am so next week we are on schedule to see Laura Ann Gilman, and she's going to talk about the sequel to Silver on the Road, which is called The Cold Eye. Now, I still have yet to confirm that with her. We arranged a while ago, so let's assume for now that that's what's going to happen. And if for some reason we're going to just have a topic discussion, I will let you know at the start of next week. However, I'm really looking forward to talking with her and hearing about this new book, and it should be very, very cool. So I hope you guys can be here. And thank you, everybody, for coming early in the year. Well, Brian, you know, it was nice to have you. I'm sorry I had to keep muting you because the problem is that when the echo is at just the right delay, you can't even think straight. So that was very, very unfortunate. But yeah, thank you guys. This was actually a really different discussion of physical exercise from the one that we had previously on the show. So I'm actually really excited. We covered some new ground, and that was cool. Anyway, yes, so thank you, and I'm going to stop the broadcast.